Hey there, Pretend Pros coming at you. I had a request to explain more in depth of my Kwang deck, and I'm happy to oblige. I hope this helps. Basically, I haven't made any changes since my last video because I actually thought about it, and overall, I'm quite pleased with this deck. The premise of this deck is you want to be able to put out as much damage as possible in the least amount of time as possible. Obviously, the only way to achieve that is using crit. So, just to go into item by item here. Basically, before I get into that, this deck is mostly revolved around crit and crit bonus. However, there are other aspects to it as well. You know, the health token here is a 1 cost that you can pick up at the start of the game if you feel that, you know, you don't really need anything else. Maybe you go back with 3, you don't want to spend them right away, you want to save up. You don't need the extra help. So why bother, you know, picking up a full card when you can just get this consumable? It's not actually a consumable, but, you know, you can pick it up and then toss it away later and get back your point. That's not a problem. Basically how I'm going to explain to use these is item by item and in what scenario you'd actually want to use these. Starting with the Guardian's Ward. Essentially, Kwang could be played as both a jungler and a laner. The choice is up to you. Obviously, with his circle, you know, the lifesteal and the sustain, you could easily jungle with him. That's not a problem. Unfortunately, I don't actually see his ganks as being, you know, successful or entirely useful. I'd much rather, you know, be able to gank someone with a Sevarog or a Rampage or even a Richter, for that matter. Because, you know, with Sevarog, you can knock them into tower. With Rampage, you can stun them. With Richter, you can pull them and stun them. Kwang basically would only have his square, which doesn't really move or stun them long enough to be really a successful gank, in my opinion. I mean, you could jungle with him, and you'd probably do very well if you only focused on minions, but I think it's very important to focus on both laning and jungling. So, for that purpose, you know, I haven't put any upgrades in either of these. I'd rather put it in the rest of my cards. Essentially, you'd want to build Stalker's Key if either you are jungling, if you're helping out someone who is jungle, you know, maybe the jungler doesn't have time to get a key, maybe they don't have time to come to your lane, maybe there's constant ganks in right lane and you're in left lane, and you want to set up a harvester faster, you know, you can pick up this key while you're at base, and then set up your harvester, and then next time you go back, just get rid of it and replace it with a different item. I can't really see most Kwangs needing a key, but I always include either both a key or a ward, or maybe both, in a deck if possible, you know, to account for all scenarios that might come into fruition. A Guardian's Ward is obviously very important for Kwang's deck, especially since, you know, I play him as a laner. I truly believe personally that he is in fact a laner and would benefit, you know, greatly from having vision in the jungle next to whatever lane he may be in. I personally believe he should be played in the lane that is, you know, adjacent to red buff, but, you know, you could technically play him in any lane if you wanted to. But if you're a laner, you know, you absolutely need to have a ward, and what better ward than to give you a bit of damage and a bit of health, especially since you're not going to keep it for the entire game. You're going to toss it, and then late game, you know, it's 3 points that you get back, and the vision kept you alive, and maybe prevented ganks on your lane, hopefully. Going down to the Adamant Edge over here, the way I've geared this is that basically Kwang is going to do damage naturally because of the crits and the crit chance items I have in this deck. I'll get into that more in depth in a couple of seconds, but he is still squishy, in my opinion. He'd be easily killed if you didn't build any health. He has lifesteal naturally because of his passive, which is amazing. And so if you want to combo that with a bit of armor and a bit of health, you know, you're much more likely to survive a gank, an engage, you know, just a fight in general. And survivability basically means you can put out more damage because you're living longer, you're less likely to die, and if you're alive, you're probably getting more card experience, which is ultimately the goal. You want to get ahead. So basically, between Adamant Edge and Amulet of the Veteran, basically how I've set this up is this card gives you 300 health total once it's fully built, counting the initial 100 and ignoring the 6.5 for now. Amulet of the Veteran is more crucial to the build than I feel Adamant Edge is. I would build this before it, just because you get health initially. I mean, you get some with this too, right? It's the exact same. But you don't necessarily need to have a greater health in Amulet of the Veteran, because you build damage and then you get 200 health at the end of it. The whole point of gearing it like this is you can get the damage output that you would need to become, you know, a serious issue and have a lot of lane presence by having 3 major strikes, especially on one card. And then if you still needed further tank after building Amulet of the Veteran, or Veteran, however you want to pronounce it, you'd build an Adamant Edge, and basically this gives you quick damage and quick health. The difference between the two of these is that, you know, Amulet of the Veteran costs 9 to fully build because you have 3 major strikes, versus Adamant Edge, where you have a strike, a minor strike, and a greater health. That's only 6. So you're spending in total 9 instead of 12. So, you know, if you absolutely need a bit of damage and some health right away, I would 100% go for an Adamant Edge. You know, if I'm getting shoved in lane under tower and constantly getting harassed by, you know, a carry of sorts, then I would probably rush the Adamant Edge. However, if I'm not under duress and I feel as though I have time and, you know, a bit of lane presence on my side, Amulet of the Veteran is absolutely the way I'd go. Blade of the Agoura is another really quick 9 card cost item that I've geared, because if you have crit chance, you're going to want crit bonus, but you're not going to want crit bonus if you don't have crit chance. So obviously you're only going to build Blade of the Agoura after the Viper Bolt. So essentially what you want to do with a crit bonus item is you want to have less card points on it so you can build it as quickly as possible. And basically the way I've set this up, you know, crit bonus affects how much crit damage you'll do, obviously by 50% bonus. But on top of that, if you're building more damage, then your initial crit damage is going to be greater, and thus your crit bonus will do more damage. So that's the reason why I put strike, major strike, and minor strike, of course. Anyways, so I've been talking a lot about damage and sustainability, and the key to sustainability, of course, is not health. Well, it is health, but it's also armor. Armor is so important in this game. And just not enough people build this on, you know, carries. I thoroughly believe that it would benefit every character to have at least one of each armor type, physical and energy, in their deck. And I lead by example, of course, and I have one of each in my deck. Now, instead of putting a temper plate and turned something, I can't remember what the name for the energy armor card is at the moment, but instead of putting the one that gives you health and armor, because Kwang, I've opted for a crit build, I chose Bright Steel Plate and Golden Veil because both give 22 either physical armor and energy armor, but they also give 6 crit chance. Now, it may not seem like a lot, but after Viper Bolt is fully built, sorry, skipping down here, you know, you're going to have 27 just from the 3 dire wounds, 3 from the initial passive, and then 6 for completing it. So you're going to have 36, and then if you build one of these, you're going to have 42% crit chance, which is very, very high in this game. And for some reason, the way this game has been programmed, seemingly, I mean, obviously, you know, if you have a 30% crit chance, you have a 3 in 10 chance every time you hit of getting a crit. And obviously, the more chance you have, the greater it is that you're going to get a crit. However, I've noticed that through just hours upon hours of playing this game, that you don't necessarily need more than, you know, 33 to 45% crit, and you'd hit just a ridiculous amount of them. Now, I'm not saying you won't not get crits by doing this, but, you know, it certainly doesn't hurt your chances. And because of the fact that you have an Adamant Edge and an Amulet of the Veteran, you don't need health from these 2 cards. Now, in which scenarios would you want to build armor on Kwang? Basically, the only time I'd build this is if an enemy champion or character became a serious threat. You know, if a Chimera gets fed early, a Grux gets fed early, Feng Mao gets fed early, Rampage gets fed early, you want to build armor. Or you know, vice versa, if Balika gets fed early, if Iggy gets fed early, if Grim gets fed early, if Murdoch gets fed early, you're going to want to build energy armor. So basically, it all depends. You have to play this one by ear, and you have to use your just common sense to determine what you want to build. You know, just look at the enemy team, see who's doing well, who isn't doing well, and determine. Usually my go-to is if someone has 3 or more kills and 2 or less deaths, then I would likely build an armor card. If they don't have that, then I'd probably still feel safe unless I've been dying a lot or I'm getting pushed in a lot. And then I may opt to not build armor and just go straight damage. Anyways, on to Sword of the Altar. I can't emphasize enough just how much of this deck is based around crit chance. And because the deck is so heavily reliant on crit chance, obviously the greater your crit damage is, the better. So we have Blade of the Agoura, which gives another 50% crit bonus, and Sword of the Altar here does the exact same thing when it's fully upgraded. The difference between the two of them is that Blade of the Agoura will make your crits do more damage, and essentially Sword of the Altar is to help you just have more sustainability in fights. Basically what you'd want to do is, let's assume you're halfway through your build and you're getting attacked a lot, maybe dying a lot, then you'd want to build Sword of the Altar over Blade of the Agoura, because all of the lifesteal here will help you survive fights. Just this card alone gives you 17.5 lifesteal per hit, plus his bonus 15 on his circle passive when it's maxed out. That's a lot of lifesteal, especially for, you know, a non-ranged carry. However, you know, if you're really ahead and you want to really get that extra damage in, maybe you want to burst that Grim, you want to fuck up that Twin Blast, then Blade of the Agoura is the way to go. But you absolutely need one, if not both of these cards in your build at all times, after, of course, building Viper Bolt. This card is the core essential of your build. I would probably build this card either 3rd or 4th, depending. You know, usually what I'd like to do is I'd like to build my Wind Carver first, of course, because you want that attack speed, you want that damage. But immediately after, if I don't need the health, I'm going to avoid building Amulet of the Veteran and Animate Edge, and I'm going to go straight for a Viper Bolt, because this whole deck is revolving around crit, and this is your crit chance card. This card is solely for crit chance, and you absolutely need to build this as quickly as you can while still being able to survive. Now, with that said, Voidsteel Dagger is very much a situational item. You may not need it, depending. Essentially, you only want to build this if you absolutely need to have physical pen. Like, you know, you're against a Steel or a Richter and they're super fucking tanky, and even with your crit damage you just don't seem to be doing enough, then Voidsteel Dagger is a must for your build, and you absolutely have to consider building it. Finally, last but not least, Wind Carver Blade. This one is self-explanatory why you'd want it. Most people on a Wind Carver Blade would actually put 3 major strikes. However, the reason I've put 2 major strikes and a major kinetic on this card is because it is the only attack speed card in this deck, and since you're so reliant on dealing damage to crit, the more times you hit, obviously the greater chance you have of landing more crits. So by including a major kinetic instead of a major strike, you greatly increase your attack speed, and it gives you a much better chance of landing more crits. Basically, just to sum up the deck here, it's not perfect. He just came out today. Obviously it's going to need refinement, but you get the gist of what at least I hope you get the gist of what I was trying to accomplish here. The theory behind this deck is that you'll be able to, if you built full damage, deal 620 to 650 damage with a crit on minions, and hopefully 300 to 450 on enemy heroes. With that said, you know, I really hope that you've learned enough from watching this. If you're just joining me now, I hope you go back to the start of this video and try and fully understand what I want to accomplish with this deck. Nevertheless, you know, again, always build 40 out of 40 cards in your deck. Never use less. They give you 40. Fill your deck with anything to prepare you for every situation you possibly can. This has been the Pretend Pros with Mother 2 here. I hope this has been informative for you. If it has, shoot me a like down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, shoot me a comment. I'd be happy to answer, hopefully. Once I'm done this video, I'm going to check them immediately and get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Unfortunately, I'm streaming this directly from my PlayStation, and I actually can't see the comments yet. Anyways, getting back to it, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe below. Thanks again.